Hi, it's Morgan. Can you think of a word that rhymes with infinitesimal? No. How about discombobulated? Seriously, though, don't waste your time, as I've tried. Save your brain space for slick podcast, keeping it real, and always keeping it groovy.
You have tuned in for a slick podcast. I'm here to seek the truth. Live from Scotland, around the UK. The one and only slick podcast. Enjoy the show. Can I ask important questions? No matter how bizarre the truth might be. Tune in for Slick Podcast, keeping it real, keeping it groovy.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or a very good day to you when and wherever you're listening from, and a very warm welcome to the show. I'm your host, Simon Norrie King. Coming up on today's show, my guest is representing a group of hunters. Not the hunting of wild game or the culling of necessity that happens here in the countryside when needed. No, the hunt is for the despicable individuals or groups that prey on the innocence of children. It's taken me months of approaching many of the groups here in Britain and in America to get an interview. Security is everything to these concerned citizens. They are not about Facebook likes, TikTok crazes or prestige. In fact, the low-life dregs they deal with couldn't possibly generate any of that. However, my guest and his team and all the teams of Britain and America have massive amounts of respect and gratitude from we the people. These paedophile hunters are meticulous in their methods, and when a paedophile has been highlighted, they are relentless. No matter the offender's size, social standing, previous violent reputation, location, weather or time of day, they absolutely will not give up, and in the name of justice, always catch their quarry. I'm not going to mention my guest's group name, as that is up to him, and I'll only refer to him as TJ. If you are listening to this interview, it means that it's been listened to by TJ and his team for scrutiny. There were certain caveats which I have had to adhere to before an interview was agreed. One of them was before this episode is released, it will be closely checked. The things that I would ask, and of course the outro, which none of my guests are ever present for. If any of those things were not satisfactory, then this episode and any correspondence and content would have been deleted, never having seen the light of day. This I would have had absolutely done, because my integrity is everything. I am grateful for having had this opportunity, and this group's security is what's important, not my self-gratification or listener figures. Although now you're listening to it, I ask that you share this very important episode as much as you can. Our children need protecting, and TJ and his crew and the many teams around the country are doing their best to provide it. So without further delay, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome TJ to the show.
Thank you.
Let's get the ball rolling on this one. Here in Britain, we have dozens of groups, probably an underestimation, concerned citizens taking matter into their own hands and drawing potential and current sexual predators out into the open, apprehending them until police assistance can arrive. TJ, start off by telling us what prompted you to begin your mission, taking matters into your own hands, giving the law hard evidence of heinous wrongdoing, and thus in turn protecting the lives and innocence of these children.
Well, basically, 8 years ago, when I was 8, I was sexually abused by 2 men, and it stayed with me for the rest of my life. Since sort of growing up, it was very difficult for me to integrate in general society for the day, day to day, and I just found it hard to trust anybody around me, be it my own family, friends at school, teachers, and then when into my working life as well, it wasn't great. So I started sort of mooching on YouTube, and saw two original hunters, as we call them. You've got Stinson Hunter and you've got Shane Brannigan. And seeing what they did and seeing the conviction rates that they were getting and, you know, the way that they went about conducting their sting operations and stuff, I just thought, wow, this is amazing. And the amount that they were catching as well made me realise that this was quite a serious thing going on, and you know it's not going to stop. So I decided that I was going to start a team. I started a team with a very, very close colleague of mine. We started off together, sort of pushing on probably 8 years ago now, and it's just gone from strength to strength, and we've been, you know, racking up the convictions.
Now, I'm not going to go into your personal trauma. It's none of my business. I get that. I've had Michelle DeWitt on the show, who runs a charitable organisation helping victims. I've had Kirby Summers on the show, as you know, American investigative journalist, talking about this. Her herself was, well, both those were victims. And I'll ask you the same question. Have they been brought to account? And then we'll move on. Have they been brought to account for their actions, those people that did such a wicked and cruel thing to you?
No, they haven't. They're still roaming.
Okay, let's move on. I recently saw a clip of two breakfast television presenters and a policeman here in the UK from a couple of years back hauling a British paedophile hunter over the coals because they saw the actions of this and such like groups as an obstruction of justice. The two presenters weren't focused upon the sexual predation or the moral depravity which is undertaken. In fact, they called the group who recently uploaded their sting operation irresponsible. I'll say that again. Irresponsible. I'm not sure if you've seen the video, TJ, I'm talking of, but what's your take on the accusation of obstruction of lawful due process because of yours and other groups' intervention before the legal system can ascertain guilt or not guilty? Now, that is just a statement I've made. I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm in no way endorsed their actions, but do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yeah, I know which one you're talking about. It's a difficult one. I don't see that we're an obstruction of justice whatsoever. I suppose they could think about the live streaming as that. You know, a lot of people do say that, you know, they're proven innocent until proven guilty. However, on the lives, they plead guilty in front of us to the camera, so that in itself is an admission. I can't see how it's an obstruction because we're assisting the police. You know, the police is under-resourced, they're understaffed. You know, there's so many budget cuts going on, and they're dedicated teams to tackle this, as their dedicated teams do, similar to what we do. They just can't keep on top of it. So concerned citizens as ourselves, and the fact that we're all parents ourselves as well, decided that we were going to work within the law to assist. So that's why us teams do what we do. There's no obstructions whatsoever. I can't see how those television presenters could even say that or even justify it. I don't think that any sting operation is irresponsible at all. You know, you get the occasional idiots out there that will, you know, do something that will mess up a case, be it, you know, I'm trying to think of the word now, be it, you know, jump on the predator, etc., because it has happened. And there's a lot of pop-up groups that you see on TikTok and that will actually do similar to what we do, and then go on it solely on TikTok, but they'll go and actually, you know, rob the predator's house or beat them up and record it and laugh and run off. You know, those type of people are obstructions. But the professional teams, myself, my team, and you know the 180 other teams spread across the country, we're very responsible with what we do. We work within the law. We work closely with the police. We take all their criticism on board. We adapt our ways. in line with, sort of police comments as well. So I can't see how they could drag him over the coals for that.
It seemed to be sensationalism for me, almost. Not saying well done to. I can't remember the gentleman's name or the team's name, but it was almost like a slap on the wrist, and the two television presenters and the policeman. Now, it's a couple of years ago. We're almost calling him a naughty boy, and there was no thought. I mean, I may go back and look at it, or may not, or mention of the vile, disgusting behaviour that this gentleman and his team were responsible for stopping. Now, I also believe that this individual case, that the predator committed suicide. I will not comment on that. But what I will comment on, again, and I reiterate, that there was no big comment about what this guy was doing and why he was doing it. Before we move on, what do you say about that?
Again, I suppose they're going along the lines of, they're innocent until proven guilty. They're obviously thinking that the actions of the hunters tipped the guy over the edge. But, in my personal opinion, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. Somebody did that. At the end of the day, they're not going to be around to predate on children any longer. If they've done that, that proves guilt completely, and they've taken the coward's way out instead of facing up to the British justice system, the UK justice system, and they've just taken the coward's way out.
I completely get that. And my experience of watching your team operate, the way you've conducted yourself with giving me permission thus far, and I will say to my viewers, if you're listening to this, I've been able to adhere to the caveats which I've been asked, in fact, told to for an interview. But the way your team and other teams convey themselves is nothing but professionalism, nothing but for acting professionally in every manner. So let's just move on. So myself and your massive following on the net have seen many of your teams well executed professional operations that you guys have undertaken. Your team approaches the offender, apprehends them, then confronts them with the evidence of the despicable wrongdoing. Why is it important to also video this operation? As having spoken to you in a private conversation a few weeks ago, I absolutely know it's not about Facebook likes or prestige. In fact, I would say that there definitely isn't, and absolutely not, any prestige whatsoever when dealing with such foul wretches.
Well, the reason why we video the operations is, the main one is that it's a full, a comprehensive log of the interaction between ourselves and the suspect. It also shows that they've not harmed us and we've not harmed them, so they can't start throwing around the fact that, they hurt us to try and get away with what he's done, and vice versa. Another reason why we do it as well is to make sure that everybody is aware of who lives around them, because we strongly believe that parents need to be aware that any predator that's apprehended, that we've got all the evidence for, if they do get bailed back to their home, they're going to be a risk to their children. So they need to be aware who he is. So if they see him on the street with their children, they can move him out of the way, or make sure their children don't play in that certain area anymore.
What would be your view on that, where somebody recognises somebody that's been on a sting? I personally wouldn't approach that person and say, you're that girl or guy. That would be another question, you've ever had that, but you're that guy that was stung. I mean, would you say that people should stay away, let the law take its action, and not be vigilante?
Correct, yes. At the end of the day, we've done our job. We've collected the evidence and we've apprehended them and got them, arrested by the police. If members of the public decide that they were going to take justice into their own hands whilst there's an active investigation going on, that can jeopardise the investigation. It is a slightly difficult one because, of course, people are like, well, why would you live stream it then if you don't want people to do that? And it's risk assessing, really. Most people out there, do have common sense, and they will approach them and, you know, mention to their children not to approach that man. But then you've got the idiots out there that probably would. But the more common sense folk, essentially, outweighs the idiots out there. So we kind of have to take that into consideration. But that's you know, as we like to say, reasonably practicable in any sense. So all I would just say is, if anybody sees them, don't approach them. Don't approach their families either, or their properties, because it's not their family's fault that they're doing this. It's solely them. We don't condone any violence. We don't condone any, you know, attacks to people's properties, vandalism, etc. So if you are listening to this and have thought about it, just knock it on the head. Otherwise, they're going to be walking free.
You're there in strength also to protect that target. I'm not going to call them the alleged or the guilty or anything. That target, you're there. So if there is a mob, because it's live streamed, some of the police are watching, but you're also there to protect. So just an offhanded question, have you ever had to do that before?
Yes, we have. Yes, we've had to fight off members of the public. All our security that are with us are trained in diffusion and restraint training. We when we get the suspect in front of us and we're interviewing them, if we do have to Section 24A them, okay, which is a citizen's arrest. In England, we have that power. In Wales and Ireland, they don't have that power. So in England, it's a bit easier for us. But once they do that, they then the duty of care is automatically on us. We have to then protect that person until a police officer takes over takes over the scene, basically. So whilst he's in our care, if anything was to happen to us, because we neglected in our duties for the due care against them, we could be prosecuted ourselves. So we tend to have a large amount there. On top of that, again, the same thing. If any violence happens to them before an investigation or during an investigation, the defence lawyers will then rip anything to shreds and just state that, you know, their clients caused physical harm because of this, mental harm because of this, etc., and will try their best to run it out of court. So, you know, if we want people behind bars, we then need to make sure that they're safe whilst in our care. And then, you know, let the UK justice system do what it needs to do.
So before we move on to the next question, the police officers that are attending, and I'm guessing you know quite a few police officers now, having dealt with the targets over the few years, do you have approval or disapproval in what you and your teams do?
Yes and no. We don't know any police officers on a personal basis. Every officer that arrives is... Yeah, we've had the occasional ones that have been to ones before in that area, but we don't know any police officer on a personal basis or a personal level. But when we are there, once they are apprehended and that, we do get approval quite a lot of the time from the officers and the sergeants that are there, you know, thanking us for our hard work, impressed by our evidence collecting, you know, impressed by how we're exhibiting all our evidence and all our statements are completed before they need to turn up, which makes their job, you know, 10 times easier. There is a lot of paperwork in the background that we do before we do any live interception. Everything has to be, you know, as tight as a duck's arse, basically. So we hand over an entire pack, and it's literally a case of we've done the legwork. They then do the final interviews, collect the final bits to give to CPS, and it speeds up that process tenfold, really. So there are some police forces out there that don't like or agree with what we do. We've had a few cease and desist letters come through our letterboxes and stuff, which we just ignore, because we're not going to cease and we're not going to desist any operation of what we're doing. And then you get the occasional grumpy officer that turns out that don't want you to carry on filming, that want us to go away, leave them to what they need to do, or try and rip our evidence to shreds there in front of us. But we'll always argue the case back to them and get their sergeant down and everything before we leave any scene. So it's hit and miss, but I would say that 92% commend us for the work we do.
If you wouldn't mind, TJ, could you give us an example of the typical operation, if there's such an animal, that your organisation runs or your team runs from its conception to end?
Well, so as a lot of people are aware, we have decoys. I'm not going to divulge any more information about how they operate, but they'll sit dormant on a site and wait for a predator to speak to them. Then they'll continue the conversation through. Once we've got enough charges based on that communication, we then assemble a sting team, which will consist of between 1 and 3 hunters and a group of sort of between 3 to 6 security, depending on location. Again, every predator is different. Every predator needs to be risk assessed before we'll go out. Some are, other parts of the country that we can't get to, because don't forget we're all self-funded. We don't accept any donations. We don't accept any money from any organisation or anything. Everything's done on our own backs. We all work full-time jobs, so we always put our money to one side, part of our wage to one side to be able to fund this ourselves. So if it is further up in the country, we'll speak to one of the 180 plus teams that are out there who's local to that area, set up a sting chat, and then we'll have a conversation, send them over the logs, and then they'll then assemble their team and go out, or vice versa. They might come to us. We'll assemble a hunting team on the ground for their logs. So we basically arrive at location. Always get visual confirmation first that the predator is there at the address. All the tracking and everything's been done in the background by ourselves. Again, I'm not going to discuss our tracking methods at all, but they are all legal and above board. Once we arrive there and we've got visual confirmation that that's the person, based on all the photographic evidence that's been sent through by them, we will then strike up a conversation, let them know who we are, why we're there, and continue our interview with them. Sometimes they like to fight back, so we have to restrain them, put them to the floor, and use reasonable force to detain them until the police arrive, which will be done under a Section 24A citizen's arrest, as I previously said. Police arrive on scene. They then check over all our evidence. Once they're happy with it, they make the arrest, book him in down at the station. We finish off all the final statements and that. Sometimes we have to go to the police station to give additional statements, and then we go home, and then we just basically wait to hear what's gone on.
Okay, for the sake of the show, and I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask this anyway. Tell me about the decoys.
No chance. The decoys are the most important people in our operation. I can't divulge how they work, their tactics, etc., because otherwise I am just going to be broadcasting everything out to any potential predators or current predators that may listen to your podcast. That they'll be able to see anything. So I'm afraid I won't be able to answer that question.
I completely understand, and you understand why I asked that, because really I wanted you to underline that point. So I really, really appreciate that. And to be honest with you, it's probably weird me saying this. I hope they are listening to this show, just for this particular incident. Let's move on. Has there been a time when you've found it difficult to hold your temper in check? I say this because I'd love to help and to be on a sting operation, but here's the thing. I suspect that I completely lose the plot. Remember that our prisons also contain those with good intent but couldn't keep their fury in check.
Yes, so there has been times where I have found it difficult. I've always managed to hold my temper. Always have and always will. However, there's been times where you feel your blood starting to boil, and now and again we'll take a step back and let one of the other hunters or, you know, a member of the security continue the conversation on our behalf whilst we're just having a 5-minute breather. I've never lashed out at a predator. I never will do. I'm not going to give them that satisfaction. But what I do tend to do is humiliate them. I sometimes degrade them in front of them because it's the least, in my personal opinion, it's the least they deserve. The way that they've degraded and the way that they've spoken to the children is disgusting. So I like to make sure that they feel that same humiliation, really.
I'll just repeat my last sentence. At prisons, this is for my listeners or anybody that is getting angry, and you probably should listen to this interview. Remember this, our prisons also contain those with good intent, but couldn't keep their fury in check. The course that you said your team attend.
Some of our security are, current or ex-doorman bouncers. Some are actually veterans that are in our UK military. So they're all very, very well trained to handle these type of situations.
Let's move on. Having talked to American investigative journalist, as you know, Kirby Summers 2 years ago on the subject of Ghislaine Maxwell and her fellow monster, FYI, I'm glad he's dead, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein, it seems to me that this foul behaviour runs deep in our society and at all levels. Have you or anyone from the team been approached by a group or individual with threats or warning you off from the essential, I'll say that again, the essential work you guys undertake?
Yes, we are aware of a Facebook-run group out there at the minute who are actively going through trawling different apps and Facebook, trying to find out who are decoys and who are not, and they're publicly outing them, essentially, to paedophiles and already convicted paedophiles, just to make sure that they're aware and to be careful who they're talking to. So essentially, it's if they're trying to stop our operations by taking down our decoys, to allow these monsters to actually talk to real children. I can't think of the name. Give me 2 seconds. I might be able to. Part of the recording, I can see that Callum's on there. Callum might know the name of the actual team. Actually, I just see Callum's on the thing. I
just saw Callum, the head of security. Yeah, I just saw him on there. I've just sent him a smiley face. Is he able to join us, or does he want to join us? Or
I don't know. Ask him. Callum,
are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hi, Callum. Welcome to the show. Thoughts so far on? Let's just take the last question about a subversive group against your team. I can't even imagine that. That basically works against you. I mean, what's your thoughts on that one, Callum?
So the group, they're actually called Stings Unstuck, and they post publicly, actively showing people how to spot decoy accounts to obviously stop our decoys from doing the work that they do. Most teams and everybody will agree that decoys are the backbone of any sting team. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do. So them actively trying to out all of those decoys, it's infuriating. But the name of the group is Stings Unstuck, and they've got a UK-based team and an American-based team. So the team they're doing is that their name is called Stings Unstuck. They've got two teams, one based in the UK, one based in America. And they post quite a bit on how to effectively spot decoys and how to avoid them and to out them across different platforms. Most teams all pretty much agree that a decoy is the backbone of any sting team that's out there today. And without the decoys, we wouldn't be able to continue doing the work that we do. So by outing these decoys, the way that they're doing is they're effectively stopping teams from being able to catch these online predators.
Would you concur then? I'll ask you the same question because you've joined us here. I asked TJ, basically I said, can you tell us about the decoys? And he said that was a firm no. So I'll ask you the first, and I know what the answer is anyway, just so my listeners understand that. Can you tell me about the decoys?
No.
Good. No, that's fine. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. So let's just move on then. In your opinion, so we'll go TJ first, and we'll come back to you, Callum. In your opinion, why has paedophilia recently grown, that's an understatement, to this seemingly out of control, dark crashing wave that threatens to consume? I'm not being overzealous here, morality, or is it just more noticeable because of the internet? TJ first, if you don't mind.
I wouldn't say that it's recently grown. I think it's always been there. It's always been deep rooted in people. I think the fact that the help of the internet is helping to expose them more. I think it's been around a lot. I mean, we have a lot of survivors that follow our pages. I say survivors, they're actually warriors, in my opinion. They've gone through similar, if not worse, to what I've been through. Some have been part of, child sex rings and stuff, and trafficking and stuff. But some of them are in their 60s, 70s, and it happened to them whilst they were 3 years old, 4 years old. So it really goes back a long, long way. But the resources haven't been there back then to be able to tackle the situation. It's only, especially with the light of the internet and what our teams sort of do now, are we able to actually bring them to the forefront, and expose them for what they really are. Some of them have been doing it for years and years, 30, 40 plus years. They've just never been caught. But with our decoys doing the really hard work, we're now exposing them.
When I actually looked into this, I thought this must be something to do with the internet, and you're saying probably not. Callum, what do you have to say about that?
So it's always been there, but as with life things, like we learn more, we adapt more, and with the internet, online predators, they've got more adaptive on how they prey on young people.
In your opinion, let's go TJ first. What needs to happen to stop this unacceptable behaviour in its tracks, or at least act as a completely justified, terrifying deterrent to bring us to a time of desperate citizens not having to act for themselves against such depravity?
Well, personally, I think they should bring back capital punishment. But we know that's never going to happen. So the next stage is to change legislation and also change the sentencing guidelines as well, because you get a heftier sentence for selling your mate a bag of weed than you would do for sexually abusing a child. You get a heftier sentence for selling your mate a bag of weed than you would do for sexually abusing a child, which is completely wrong. We are starting to notice that a lot of our convictions are now starting to get a bit more lengthier sentencing, which is good. It means that something is happening, something's progressing within the with the CPS. However, we need more. I think the moment that they start giving harsher sentencing, enough of this, 2 years suspended sentencing, it does nothing. Give them a sexual harm prevention order, fine. However, they don't keep on top of the monitoring of their devices like they should do. There needs to be heavier punishment to essentially warn them off, to say that, if you're going to do this, this is the sentencing you're going to have. 20 years, 30 years imprisonment. They start dishing those out. I guarantee people start thinking twice before they get on the internet.
So, Callum, before you come in, I'll add another point to this. And TJ, can you just pick this up? So, somebody who I'm just trying to get in the head of someone here. So, somebody who is curious should be treated the same as somebody who is actively or has been active in this. I don't think there should be, personally, any distinction in punishment. What do you say about that, TJ, before we come over to you, Callum?
Well, the sentencing has changed. The fact that, chatting to a child or who they believe to be a child online carries the same punishment as it would if you were to actually, physically abuse a child online. And they are starting to bring that up. They've also changed the parameters that, meeting a child is, the same sentence as if you show that intent on a conversation. So things are starting to change for the better.
But what is that? What is that punishment? So somebody who's talking to a child and meeting the child, that seems like I'm going to have to put a swear bleep in, a fucking fast, to be honest with you. What is, my apologies, but the listeners will hear a bleep there. What is there must be some distinction between meeting a child or talking to a child online, meeting a child. So what is the slap on the wrist? Tell me that before we move on to you, Callum. What is that punishment?
Well, everything gets tied in, but it's part of the charging. So, a predator won't have, or a paedophile won't have just one separate charge against them.
Okay.
There'll be many charges against them, which equates to the overall sentencing. But the charge is the same for actually meeting a child. If the intent's there, that charge is still the same as that. They'll still class it as, essentially meeting a child.
Okay. Callum, is the sentence big enough? And what could be the deterrent, in your opinion?
I'm pretty much on the agreement with TJ. Capital punishment would be like the best thing that could happen. We obviously know that's not going to be happening. But we do need harsher sentences. We've caught reoffenders that I'd done a sting not long ago where the predator in question was talking to someone we stung them on the day exactly a year after they were stung by another team. And he was talking to the exact same decoy. So he literally just went back to the same decoy he was talking to because he didn't think she was involved. And we went and stung him again exactly a year to the day. And he was arrested again, released again on bail pending investigation. And he actually had court at the end of that month for the previous year. But as far as I'm aware, they actually, instead of tying them both together to be able to give them a greater sentence, they're trying it as two separate crimes. So the first one's probably just going to be a light sentence with a suspended sentence or conditions that he's not to be unsupervised children. So the only way to stop people from doing it is to change the guidelines on children on the internet for a start. To be able to be 13 years old on Facebook, and the things that you can see on Facebook, a 13-year-old shouldn't be able to see. So why are we allowing our 13-year-olds on Facebook? Me personally, I've got 3 daughters. None of them would be on Facebook until they're over the age of 16. Because I know the stuff that's on Facebook. Same as TikTok and all the other social media out there. The things that these predators hide behind and get to talk to children, we need to up the ages, stop the children from going on it, and hopefully it will prevent children coming to harm through these predators online. Or just chop their bollocks off.
We will be right back.
Yeah, it's a slick podcast and we keeping it real. We keeping it groovy. It's the food for your thoughts, so you know we ain't losing. We just trying to hit the top. Every topic you choosing, simulate the mind frame. We just helping you use it. Feel it's a slick podcast. Thanks for tuning in, cause we're here to see the truth. Yeah, we doing it. Life in Scotland, around the UK. Listen what the you say. No matter how bizarre, we answer it. Yeah, it's the new way. Slick podcast, come enjoy the show. Keep it real, keep it groovy. Always how we roll. This is passion. Podcast, this is passion.
Yeah, it's a slick podcast, truly unforgettable topic. This is Slick Podcast.
Can I ask, I've asked TJ this, what brought you to this mission, this vocation yourself, Callum?
So I first got involved, it was actually my missus just scrolling through Facebook, and she watched Stings religiously. I never personally started watching them properly just because it would anger me. I've got 3 daughters, all below the age of 12. So I never used to watch it because it used to anger me with stuff that it'd say. Plus, some ways the teams deal with things, and I didn't quite agree with. But the missus got me to watch one of them, and a post popped up saying recruiting security. Now, I've been a doorman for 15 years. So I'm pretty handy on the door. I know I can restrain people. I know I can hold my temper if I really needed to. And I just thought, do you know what? Instead of me sitting around in the evenings or just doing nothing, why not just try and help rid as much as I can from the world of these predators? And I contacted TJ at the team. We went through all the recruitment side of things and the other things that we go through. And then I was out on my first sting within a couple of days, and it literally just grabbed the feeling that you get when you watch the police officers turn up and they slap the cuffs on. It's such an immense feeling that you can't really describe it. And just the feeling alone is enough payment rather than getting paid for doing this. Just the feeling alone is enough.
It's essentially like a feeling of ecstasy, really. You know, that feeling when he's on, it just, your whole body just, it releases so many endorphins, and you just get this sense of relief and this sort of rush to know that, you know, children have been saved. You know, we've actually done something that's good for humanity.
So before we move on, Callum, again, I'll ask you, so you're obviously a trained doorman, because now it's not just give Callum a fire and stop the idiots. You know, there's obviously training to be a security, a door, a pub and a club. But I've asked TJ this question. Has there been a time where, you know, you've really had to walk away, turn away, because you felt yourself, your blood boiling? Now, I know you do that as a living, you're a professional, and you've seen that, you know, the drunken skinny twat that's right in your face and you could swat it like a fly. But you'd be in prison if you even did that. But has there been a time whilst, and this is not sensationalism now, has there been a time where you've nearly crossed that line because of the foul wretches you've had to deal with TJ and his team?
Yeah, there's been a couple. We've done one in Kent, Gravesend. And he was just disgusting. He wanted to meet a child at a train station. While we was there doing the sting, we didn't have a clue that he was actually a reoffender until he actually admitted it himself. But the way that he admitted about doing it, it was just like, oh yeah, I've robbed a can of Coke from a shop. It was just so blasé. He didn't give a crap. So he just come out of it like it was just something normal. But then he followed on to then describe what he had done, how he'd got caught. And the child that was in question, the same age as my daughter, and I had a bottle of Fanta in my hand, and I gripped and squeezed that bottle that hard that I cut my hands. And when after the sting was finished and we was going home, I couldn't actually undo the bottle because I'd screwed it up that tight and hurt my hands in the process. That one, I wanted to do what everyone wanted to do when they're facing that situation, and that was to kill him.
And what I will state on that is, for anybody that's listening to that, his name is called Andrew Green from the Gravesend area. I'll put that out there right now. You know, his face is all over the internet. But again, Andrew Green from Gravesend area, teethy little twat.
No, I'm glad you didn't react that way, because paraphrasing, the prisons are also populated with those who couldn't hold their passion in check, whether they had good intent or not. So I'm glad you're still in the team. So let's move on. TJ, first of all, if you don't mind, as a fact, our society, as a fact, has and continues to be policed by a lot of brave men and women that really do put their lives on the line every single day to keep law and the essential order that we so badly need. Having said this, in my opinion, the law and justice no longer, now you can disagree with me, this walk hand in hand, or at least in certain aspects. In your experience, TJ, and opinion then, in dealing with the justice system, what improvements could be initiated?
Well, as I've previously said, you know, with the justice system, the legislation and the sentencing guidelines need to change. They need to be improved. They need to be harsher sentencing on it. The law and the justice, I don't believe, do walk hand in hand anymore. I think they need to have a big review on you know, the policing itself, especially with you know, the policing of the internet and things like that. I mean, it's a very hard thing to police, but it's, again, it needs tougher punishment. It needs to have that tougher punishment. And also, I think there needs to be like a standardised way that the police actually deal with teams like ourselves. You know, we'll run similar, but every police, not really police department, but every area, county that has their own police force need to all be singing from the same hymn sheet, because, you know, we would hand over our evidence to one police force who will accept, you know, paper copies and a USB stick, for example, with everything on it. But there'll be another one that says, no, we don't deal with that. You don't have to upload it to our internal portal system, which can be a bit of a ball ache. And then there'll be another one that'll be like, okay, well, we won't accept this here. You're going to have to come down the police station and submit it as evidence face to face and run through it that way. And it just, there needs to be a standardized system of, you know, accepting the evidence and processing the evidence to the CPS that every single police force around the UK follows. Because, you know, I'm dealing with cases, you know, recent cases that are only just being brought into the system from 2 years ago. It's taken them 2 years to even reach a point where they're going to put them in court. You know, sometimes it's the fact that after they've done digging and searched their devices and, you know, done the forensic downloads of their electronic devices, that they found more and more. So, of course, that is going to make the investigation longer. But there's ones that, you know, they've had the download, everything else is fine except the conversation he's had with a child, but it's taken 2 years to be brought to justice. And at that time, they're walking the streets. Yes, they might have bail conditions, but nobody's following them around, or nobody's monitoring to make sure that they're working within those bail conditions. And that's how we get reoffenders. That's how we get reoffenders, because a lot of the reoffenders will be like, well, I got done like 4 months ago. I'm, you know, nothing's happened. I'm just, you know, they're still investigating. Oh, okay. Well, have you got any bail conditions? Are you meant to have an electronic device? Well, no, I'm not. But you've got one. Who's monitoring? Oh, nobody's come to monitor. And it's like, well, because of that, he's now managed to get himself another device, get back online and start talking to children again. So it needs to be tightened up that way.
Callum?
Well, it's like TJ said, all police forces in United Kingdom, they need to be using the same systems throughout, because we do stings all over the country, whether it's down south or up north, Midlands, or right down west in farmer country. And different forces handle it different, which can be difficult. They either want us to come to the station, and then it's prolonging our nights even longer than what they need to be, because they need us to exhibit A, B, C, D, and E in an interview. Some forces don't want to accept it at all, and they'll just take the simple details from you. And then you're hearing back from them about 5 days later, trying to get a statement over the phone. And it's a complete different officer. So you're having to then explain everything to a complete different officer that you first originally dealt with. The way that they check up on offenders, whether they've been released or whether they've just been charged, they need to be strict on it. It's not just that you've got people with learning difficulties as well. Our most recent one, we dealt with a guy with learning difficulties, quite severe learning difficulties, and he was caught a year ago, and the care assistant there actually admitted that he was given a phone that wasn't able to download certain apps, and that they were checking on his devices regularly. We obviously knew different because we're at this guy's front door for the exact same reasons, because another team was handled him in a year ago. And then we've dealt with other ones where they'd been released from a prison term for indecent images on his laptop, phone, talking to underage children. And he simply turned around and said that he was offered the help, but every time he tried getting in contact with them, it was always pushed back week after week after week, and he just got the feeling that they didn't care. So he just gave up trying to seek the help that he wanted to get and just carried on talking to children. So the whole thing needs a shake-up, and they need to work out the best way going forward to catching these people and preventing it from carrying on. And also, along with we've got the ULEZ and things like that, that money could be put into the police to help there be more police teams that do what we do, because they're so understaffed and under budget that they can't do what we do all of the time, and they're catching nowhere near as many predators as what we'll catch within a month. So the whole thing just needs a reshuffle. Even if it's just working with teams like ours and going, well, how would you propose we work in a more effective and a better way in helping catch these predators?
You're suggesting maybe a police liaison officer?
Yeah, so working on the doors and stuff. There's a thing called Pub Watch, where we have a police liaison officer who comes along for monthly meetings with the teams in that area, or the security teams in the pubs in the area, and they work on people being banned from the pub for whatever, whether it's drugs or fighting or whatever else. A similar thing needs to be done through the police and the teams like ours, where you just have a dedicated officer that liaisons with teams like ours that proactively helps to try and get these off the streets, and asking not only advice from us to say, like, well, how can we do better to speed up the process of getting the convictions? Because some of these convictions take years. One of the last convictions of a member of our team, it was ongoing for 3 years before the person was actually in court being convicted. But 3 years is a long time. In those 3 years, he could be doing whatever he wants, talking to more children and flying under the radar because he's already been caught once. So he's being more careful not to get busted. So a liaison officer with teams would be a good idea.
Before we move on, I think that it's right to mention the families. I believe I've watched one of your things, maybe a couple of them, where the wife or the members of the family have been absolutely distraught, and quite rightly so, because it affects them as well. Everything, nothing to do with social standing, although that is affected as well. And though they weren't shown on camera, I'm sure it was your thing, the wife was absolutely crying her eyes out. What do you do to help that? Because I know you don't shrug your shoulders and, oh, well, but I mean, that must affect you as well. TJ first, if you don't mind.
It's really sad to see the effect that it has on the families. You know, when the wife's distraught and in bits, we tend to always have a female member of the team with us, because we do find that the wives or the daughters of the victims of the predators, etc., are there. They tend to be more comfortable speaking to another female. about this. So we always make sure we've got somebody there that can actually go and talk to them and, you know, let them know exactly what's happening, let them know what they've really been doing, and, you know, try and give them as much comfort as possible. We've also got our own aftercare team as well. So any victims or any you know, members of the family who have been affected by these beasts' actions can get in contact with one of our trained, who's actually a qualified counsellor, to get free counselling through us as well.
Callum, how do you deal with the families? The wife, she's in tears. The daughters, as TJ's just said.
Well, there's one that we can pin on. We've done a sting and slough, and it was an Asian guy living in very cramped conditions with a young baby. They literally couldn't afford without the beast's income from him working, and she was heavily pregnant at the time. Also had another young baby there, and they were actually warming milk in the kettle itself. So instead of boiling a kettle with water, they're putting milk inside the kettle to warm the milk up to be able to feed the baby. She's obviously very distraught because not only is she now losing money because her husband's going to be arrested, jail, or even deported. So she's worried that now she's going to be taken back to where they come from. She's not able to provide for her young children and the unborn that she's currently carrying. Now, my partner who comes on the stings, helps out the security, she spoke to him. They didn't have any heating in the flat whatsoever. Luckily, we had someone with us that was quite a handyman, and he actually went in the property, sourced out their heating for them, so they could actually have heating inside the property and hot water. And then my partner actually went to the shop and bought baby formula, nappies, and some basic food just to be able to care for the young ones that are inside the property. I mean, this property was a 2-bedroom flat, and there was 7 occupants in that property. Numbers were left, so if they needed to, they could give us a call and speak to our dedicated aftercare team about any issues or worries that they had. My partner even gave the wife her personal number so that if she ever needed anything, she could just give us a call and just ask for help if she really needed it. And it is hard to see. Sometimes it grabs your heartstrings and you're just like, you absolute monster. You've just destroyed your life, but you're destroying your family's life as well. And it's not just the partners we've done somewhere, it's the mothers. And you've got the mother completely breaking down that her son is this beast, doing the worst thing that you can do. And it is tough, it is hard. Sometimes I've gone home after a sting and I've not been able to sleep all night because all I can think about is how are they going to carry on, how are they feeling, how are they going to adjust to their life knowing this. And people can't be the nicest of people. Even if it wasn't their fault, they were still trying to find a fault in them to try and blame them. So no, I don't just shrug my shoulders, but I try to empathise how they feel and just try and reassure them that they're going to be okay. And it's pretty much the best thing that we can do. There's nothing else really we can do apart from just try and offer that a bit of advice, a bit of help, a shoulder if needed while we're there.
Also, the good thing about that sting that we did in Slough was that we raised, when the police officers came, we actually walked through the property with the officers and raised everything that was wrong with that. And the officers they ended up sending somebody down from the police team to come and actually have a look at the conditions that they were living in and to get stuff sorted and to get those conditions, rectified and gave them more support actually from the police as well.
That is thoroughly decent of you. Callum, I mentioned a a segment on a breakfast television episode where basically a police officer and two television presenters were pulling a paedophile hunter. But if they'd only heard what I've just heard, you guys are thoroughly decent. Okay, last question before we wrap up. TJ first. As a father, and because of your experience hunting sexual predators, the worst of society, could you give some ideas? This is important, on safety, both online and off, keeping the children safe from these, let's think, vile creatures.
Yes. As a parent, always check your children's devices. Make sure that you do, every 2 days or every week, you do a full check of their phone, check all their messages, make sure they're not actually, talking to the real children. It's really important that you do. Also, make sure that your internet provider or your actual router is locked down with firewalls, making sure that the children can't access any content that's over the age of 16, 18. So they can't actually access various websites and, of course, various apps as well. Because if you've got a block on that, if the app is actually, every app has to have an age rating on it, those apps won't show in the App Store if you've got your Wi-Fi router locked down. If your child has got their own mobile device, so if they go onto 4G or something like that, you can actually go into the settings and put age restrictions on there, which is done through a parental PIN or password that only you can have. You can't bypass it. Also, there's various apps out there that you can actually look for various phones and stuff. You got things like Net Nanny, which is one of the best ones that are out there for parental control. Kaspersky's Safe Kids, Custido, Norton Family as well. There's another one called RPact that you can get. These are all devices, apps that you can download on your device and your child's device. And that gives you full control over their phone. You can see everything that they want to. If the internet or the phone will cut out at, let's say, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, which means through the night they can't use their mobile phone and stuff like that. It keeps it a lot safer online, a lot safer. And also educate your children in online, online issues. Not only just, to do with what we do in relation to sexual abuse to children, but also online bullying as well, because that's detrimental to children as well as what we're here for. So speak to them, make sure that they understand, and I know that there are some families out there that have got children, a little bit older children, still under the age of sort of 18, 16. But they sometimes let them watch these things to know what's happening, to know how many there are out there, and to make sure that, if anybody speaks to you like they are, that you are to tell me, you speak to me, you confide in me. And they're just things that you can do as a parent to make sure that your children are safe whilst they're at home, and at school or walking around with their friends.
Sound advice. Callum.
So I've got 3 daughters. One of them does have a mobile phone that she uses to contact her mother. And I use Google Family Link. So everything she does on her phone, it alerts my phone. I can see absolutely everything. I can see her messages. I can see apps that she downloads. I can see time spent on an app as well. If she wants to download a new app, it notifies me, and I can then either approve it or I can decline it. So she can't download anything without my say-so. I've got parental locks on it, so if she tries accessing the internet, anything that she shouldn't be going on, she can't go on. So the only thing she can actually access on the internet is her school apps that she uses for homework. They're literally the only things she can access on the internet. She can't even access regular YouTube without my say-so. even certain videos on YouTube without my say so, she can't go on it. But it's also got location on it, so I can see where she is at all times. Well, when she does go out to her mum's or she's at friends, I can see on my app exactly where she is. I can ping it if I really want to. And even when she's outside of the family network, so she's out and about, she's using the 4G on her phone, she tries downloading TikTok, it will still notify me back on my phone that she's trying to download TikTok, and I can decline it and be like, no way you having TikTok. But like TJ said, there's loads of apps out there. Just do a bit of research into them, find which one's best for you, best for your devices, and go from there. And again, educate your children. So if you are letting them access the internet, educate them first about the dangers of the internet. If they've got, we educate our children on stranger danger. Educate the same with the internet. If you've got someone on the internet trying to talk to you that you don't know who it is, tell someone about it or just block them. Don't engage in any type of conversation with them, and just get them to tell you, oh, Mum, Dad, I've got this person trying to talk to me. He says that he's 25 years old. Make them aware that they can come to you with it. Because a lot of people think they're going to get in trouble if they come to their parents because they've got a man talking to them. Let them know that they won't get in trouble, that it is safe to come to you and say, I've got this person talking to me. He says he's 25. What should I do? It's simple things like that will help go a long way and help, again, prevention of it ever happening to them. Also, don't ever try and talk to the predator yourself. Most parents, we've had people inbox us before. My daughter's been talking to this 30-year-old man. He's been saying these types of things. We've messaged them, telling them that they're dirty so-and-sos and stuff. But don't even message them back. Take it straight to the police. Let the police be aware of it. Give them the device. Show them everything they need to see. And then let the police deal with it. It's the best and safest way to deal with anything. But yeah, main thing, educate the children, let them know the dangers, and make sure they're aware that it's safe to come back and talk to you about it.
Sound advice. It's obvious to me, TJ and Callum, that your children are your greatest treasure. So before we wrap up, though, I've done a very deep dive on this sort of subject matter. I've talked to, as I've said, Kirby Summers, American investigative journalist, and also Michelle DeWitt, a couple of months ago, who runs Unbreakable Faith, who deals with the aftermath and talks to the victims and helps them. And they both tell me some very horrible, nefarious stuff. But this runs deep and it runs dark. And I'd like you to comment on this. I saw a documentary recently called These Little Ones, researched and directed by Matthew Miller and Nicholas Stumphauser. Long story short, but it's about a huge rise in child abductions and child trafficking across America. The documentary states, well, it states anyway, 83,000 a month go missing. That is a very alarming figure, if accurate, very alarming indeed. Some of these are allegedly in the name of satanic abuse. Have you seen the film or wish to comment on this particular worrying trend of cult involvement?
I've never personally seen the film myself. I've never seen it, but cults are a real thing. Cults are an evil thing. It's there have been a few predators that we've actually caught that have claimed to be part of some satanic cults themselves. They've never specifically said if they've done anything to children or anything like that, but the way that they were when we stung them, it makes you think that they've done it quite a few times before, because they were very, very clever in their wording. They were very clever in the way that they groomed the child, and for me that shows that they've done that for a long time. So I wouldn't be surprised if being part of the cult had anything to do with it. But again, I don't think it's just satanic cults. I know there's a lot of cults out there, even stems off of Christianity and the Catholics and stuff. They've got various offshoots of cults that do similar things as well, in the name of religion. And it's I'm not a churchgoer myself, but I can definitely tell you it's against everything that the Ten Commandments state. So I wouldn't be surprised personally.
Callum, have you seen the film, or have you got an opinion on that?
I haven't seen the film, no. But again, like TJ said, religion, lots of things stem from religion. All sorts of bad things happen that all stem from some type of a religious cult that are doing it in the name of their religion, which has got nothing to do with the religion, and other people within that religion state that's got nothing to do with what we do. These people are just bad and wrong people.
That's at the top of the hour, and I really appreciate the time you've given us today. Before we wrap up, though, on occasion I ask my guests for some parting words of inspiration, something that we can muse over and reflect upon, something inspiring or just plain words of hope. However, this is not one of those times. I invite you now to address those you hunt directly, whether it's someone sexually curious about children, actively involved in, or has been and think it's all gone away by now, etc. Therefore, if you'd be so willing, I would accept that opportunity. Then TJ and Callum, you now have the floor.
What I would like to address is that if you decide that you're going to ever talk to children, we will find you and we will get you prosecuted. There's no doubt about that. You can't hide from us whatsoever. We will always be there. And, if you're thinking about it, or if you are one of these that are talking to children, it won't be long before we're knocking at your door.
Callum.
If you're one of those ones that haven't yet acted and you are thinking of talking to children or anything to do with children, you're an adult, go and seek some professional help. Go speak to your GP. Go speak to the police. Just go and speak to somebody to get the help before it's too late. For those ones that are already actively out there talking to children or anything against children, we will find you. We will actively seek you out, prosecute you, and make sure that everybody in the world knows your face, knows where you're from, and knows that you're a danger to our children.
TJ, Callum, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Simon. And thanks for helping spread more awareness on this matter.
And that was the Paedophile Hunters interview with TJ and Callum. I've decided that I'm going to begin this outro with a soundbite from the documentary made by Nicholas Stumphauser and Matthew Miller, titled These Little Ones. I made mention of this film in my conversation with TJ and Callum earlier. Am I in breach of copyright by playing it for you? Maybe, but I'm making no money from these sound bites, and the documentary is free to view also. Besides, it's the content that is of importance and relevant right now. I'll leave a link for it in the show notes below. I've also done all I can to check story sources as well as the figures of missing children mentioned in this documentary. Google shows me that in America it's estimated that 460,000 children go missing each year. In the UK it's around 70,000, although this documentary states the US figure as much higher. And I'll also point out that as far as I'm aware, there are no how many are found or return home figures. This must also be considered. I'll leave you, the listeners, to decide. The point being is, either way, it's still incredibly concerning. After speaking to TJ and Callum, having researched this subject previously in depth, I can tell you this wickedness runs deep and it runs very dark. As you may or not remember, I've also spoken with independent American investigative journalist and author Kirby Summers, who also confirms that last statement of mine. Be sure to check out her books and fantastic podcasts also. Lastly, I must state for the record that TJ, Callum or any of their team are in no way associated or responsible with this soundbite I'm about to play you. It's authentication or endorsement. This is a solo effort by myself to highlight and bring as much awareness to this world encompassing pandemic of paedophilia and that evil which I'm convinced is behind it. Take a listen, then we will continue with the outro for today's conversation.
There are hundreds of children in Arizona who are missing right now from state custody. But who is out there looking for them?
Over 1 million children vanish each year.
The FBI has found dozens of missing children in Los Angeles. It's all part of what's being called Operation Lost Angels.
83,000 each month.
They found nearly 978 children went missing in 2019.
2,700 a day.
72 missing children across Indiana, Iowa, Ohio, and Georgia in the past several weeks.
115 per hour.
In the meantime, the Arizona Department of Child Safety says tonight they can't locate 44 children who are supposed to be in their custody.
1 every 30 seconds.
Some in this operation were trafficked, some sexually and or physically abused.
This child trafficking thing is real. It has always existed.
I'd certainly recommend clicking on the link below and watching this documentary if you were thinking of making a seriously deep, free-fall descent down the rabbit hole. As I said, this runs deep and it runs very dark. Make no mistake, foul creatures do in fact roam this land, hungry for the innocence they can consume. Ungodly creatures that in the name of depravity would rob good people of their greatest treasure. Guard your children closely and send your good wishes to the hunters who actively seek out those wretched creatures on our behalf, and if left unchecked, would be free to spread their wretchedness. So, back to today's conversation. I'm sure you noticed the amazing act of kindness TJ, Callum and their team showed towards the family of a child predator, who themselves were already in a very desperate situation. The hunter team's actions were truly commendable and heartwarming. Notice also that TJ and Callum didn't mention the name of their team, nor did they mention so much as a Facebook page to follow them. No donations were asked for, or support in any way. Check this out.
Because don't forget, we're all self-funded. You know, we don't accept any donations. We don't accept, any money from any organisation or anything. Everything's done on our own backs. You know, we all work full-time jobs. So, we always put our money to one side, part of our wage to one side to be able to fund this ourselves.
This to me speaks volumes. These guys are interested in one thing and one thing only, justice. We've already established that there isn't any glamour in what they do. They are extremely private and humble, decent human beings. To TJ and Callum, and to all the hunting teams here in Britain and across the globe, you have the massive respect of the people, and this show salutes you. I'd like to thank you, my dear listeners, for attending this cast today, and I ask that you share this episode far and send it even further yon. If you enjoyed this episode, give it a like, subscribe also if you'd be so kind. Leave a comment below or send the show an email, the slkpodcast@gmail.com. But either way, please keep them kind. Remember, you can find the Simon Laurie King podcast on all the usual platforms, including Apple, Buzzsprout, YouTube and Facebook. And so, my friends, it's time for me to go. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and certainly not afraid. Bye.
Slick Podcast. Keeping it real. And always keeping it groovy.